Coming up on the next episode of LoveWorks with Juan and G.
Hello to all you lovers out there.
Hola.
Welcome to LoveWorks with Juan and G. Today we are going to be sitting down to talk about what it means to be Black and LGBTQ or SGL in the community.
We're sitting down with a group of 4 dynamic activists and community leaders, Dr. CLEO MANAGO.
In order to be an activist for social change, we have to have a critical analysis. If you are woke, you're aware about that and it concerns you.
Kia Comedy.
So my question is, genuinely, how do we bridge this gap in our own community outside of anybody?
KN.
Everybody wants everything to be peaceful and kumbaya and let's talk it out. Bullshit. Exactly. I'm gonna meet you exactly where you are.
And Zoom.
You are seeing somebody who is an oppressor. You're being raped. You're sleeping with your rapist.
And no subject is off limits.
So big shout out to New York Life for sponsoring LoveWorks.
Hello to all you lovers out there. People always asking us what's the tea. It ain't no tea, baby, can't you see? Loving me, loving you, loving we. Love works with Juan and G.
It ain't no tea, baby.
What's the tea?
It ain't no tea, baby.
What's the tea?
It ain't no tea, baby.
What's the tea?
It ain't no tea.
The let's have one more.
2.
Make that 2 more plan.
Sweetie?
Let us help with your plan.
We can do that.
Sounds like a plan.
Start a plan that flexes with yours. New York Life.
Well, we are here today to discuss race and what that means being a person in the LGBTQ as well as SGL community. And so we thought that you guys were very powerful people in the community with people with a lot of opinion that we thought would be a good people to have in the room. So,
And as we mentioned, this is conversational style. We want to respect everyone's point of view. So you see this term a lot. I'm an activist, I'm an activist, I'm an activist. And I don't necessarily think people define it. So what's your agenda?
My agenda is the critical thinking, culture affirmation, healing, and self-conceptual advancement of diverse Black people. So everything I do is toward that goal because I think it's extremely necessary because we're suffering as a result of not having enough activism along those lines. And I think that the delineations are important because there's a lot of people who aren't activists and say they're activists. There's a lot of people who are in a coma who say they woke. And
we're gonna talk about that one.
So what does that mean to be woke anyway? And let's give an example of a person that you feel like may refer to themselves as woke and they think that they're woke, but you feel like this.
But for example, this might be controversial to people, but there's a movement that was quite popular in the media a year and a half ago, mostly called Black Lives Matters.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very much involved in a lot of press work, particularly on TV One, Roland Martin's show. And I was there when there were whispers about Black Lives Matters when it became a thing, and then when it finally petered out into a fad. So I saw the whole thing in terms of its development, and it started off as a hashtag on Facebook and Twitter, and then there were these murders that happened simultaneously of previously Trayvon, then Michael Brown, etc. And because of the shock and horror, and in my opinion, embarrassment among Blacks of seeing all this murder, the hashtag came up just in time, along with all the videos, to make people wake up, to at least somewhat wake up, around the fact that there was a problem that we need to address.
So are you saying like it was a coincidence? Like the hashtag was there then?
It was perfect stormish.
Huh.
It wasn't as deliberate as people think. If the Black Lives Matters movement was really a movement that was woke, it would still be in the streets. We never needed it as much as we needed it now, ever in history. Where are they? If it was really a Black human rights agenda as opposed to a fad with dashikis on it, we would still be very, very active with Donald Trump being the president. The murder rate in terms of cop killings has not gone down. Everything's pretty much the same.
Well,
activists continue until the job is done.
Well, I would counter that slightly because I worked with the Black Lives Matter chapter here in Atlanta, and I don't think that any of the activism has died out or has become a fad. It's just the media is no longer interested in covering it.
Sure.
There's still activism happening every day, even here in Atlanta.
But again, I was around when it was a whisper, became a roar, and then it petered out from my perspective. There was a time where there was a groundswell of people on the streets.
Yeah.
They a groundswell of people on the streets. All you got to do if you're an activist and you want to address one of our major problems, for example, which is the press, go picket CNN. It's available. Go picket NBC. There's no such thing in media as a sustained love story between black people. Now this is a comedy. That is a problem. That impacts our self-concept, our children watching this canvas of white people loving each other, black people loving them, and never loving each other. And that has an impact on how we see the world. That needs to be addressed. If they had an activist vision, or people understood the gravity of how things are, people would be in the streets talking about that, for example. Matter of fact, I said on the Roland Martin show in 2017 that the next frontier, now that you guys have helped to bring police brutality to the surface, is addressing the white supremacist press. And making it a big deal, for example, that there's no such thing as a black love story in media.
But how can there be like a next frontier when the police brutality frontier hasn't even been adequately addressed, in my opinion, at least? But my thing is, okay, you're complaining, you're marching, you're doing all that, but what's next?
I think people are afraid to take that what's next step. The what's next step has to be more forceful. It has to be more violent. If we look at history itself, no liberation was ever attained peacefully. Anybody who said that they truly wanted to be free fought for their freedom on every country and every nation and on every speck of this planet. When you talk about what's that next step, it's the thing that people don't want to vocalize, but it's inevitable. But it is a part of history.
Do you think we'll take that step?
I think so.
So what is that? I need you to map that step out for me. Like, what are you suggesting the next step?
No, I think a revolt has to happen. I think a revolt will happen. Everybody wants everything to be peaceful and kumbaya, and let's talk it out. The whole respectable politics and bullshit. Exactly. I'm gonna meet you exactly where you are, and white people use that submissive mentality in order to continue to control us. But I do think that all of these seeds of awakening are happening, and I do think that it will eventually happen.
So how do we get, as a community, how do we heal the community to get to the place of
it takes every person being deliberate and being conscious. Because my thing is, each individual has a set of gifts that the universe bestows upon all of us. We need to collectively tap into each of those gifts and use those gifts to be healing our community. So, and it's not something that happens quickly or overnight.
You think it's happening?
I do think it's happening. I just don't think the number of people that are tapped into that energy,
not enough people,
is there yet.
Well, but
I do think that it's happening, and I do think that an awakening is happening.
Well, we think we get enough black preachers to wake up, and maybe we can progress that.
That's when you're about to write.
We can pick up the speed.
But you know what? Here's my unpopular opinion, and it's not really popular, but it seems to me as though you're looking for an answer to the solution of oppression. There is no answer.
Yes, it is.
In my opinion, let me just state my opinion. In my opinion, there is no answer. I think that racism will end within 300 years when white people are no more.
That ain't true.
Well, you know what?
I heard that before a long time ago.
Oprah said that.
What?
In order for racism to die, all the racists have to die.
Unfortunately, she don't know what she's talking about. I mean, Oprah's a talk show host, not a behavior scientist.
No, I think the change within the black community needs to stem from the individual. We need to individually look inside ourselves, help to grow ourselves instead of worrying about what everybody else is doing in their own lives and how you ain't woke enough. Just worry about yourself being woke and being your highest, best self. And then that will then begin this collective awakening consciousness.
I don't think that, but see, I don't think that's...
We're too consumed with what everyone else is doing and thinking that is preventing unity.
But how do you
But
pull somebody
frankly,
up if you're sticking to yourself, though?
It's
How do you
about
get
doing
somebody
the
else
self-work.
But
It's not by being the best self you can outwardly, being that example, modeling that behavior. You're still doing your activism, but it's not about imparting your desires, your perspectives onto other people.
But people,
you can do the
if the blind is
self-work.
leading the blind,
You're not going to
then,
Right.
and if you in your own world of blindness,
But that's where the modeling comes
can't
from.
see.
The modeling the behavior, the still doing the work that we do, but it's not from the vantage point of trying to change people's minds. It's about just being and emanating and having that energy permeate the community rather than changing other folks.
So what about
You can't
color?
change nobody. You can only inspire them, in my opinion.
Do bad.
there's people who spend 10
So we
hours
just-
in the mirror to get their hair blonde who are black who think they're woke.
Can a blonde black person be woke?
Absolutely.
No.
Yes, absolutely.
Let me answer the
What's
question.
a hairstyle, Cleo? Come on.
Yes, they can.
Well, let's hear his answer behind that, though. Why can't...
See,
Please.
this is what I mean.
Okay,
so
explain.
we're speaking nurses by the blind leading the blind. In a society, do you see people? I'm talking about people who are not black running around. I'm talking about in visible, large scale, noticeable numbers. People run around trying to have hair like black folks. We keep trying to be liberal and say, okay, black women blonde their hair is just a hairstyle. No. If it was just a hairstyle, there would be cultural equity across everybody's hair.
Universe.
There's not a whole bunch of white women and everybody else with Afro weaves or trying to, and there's not a movement in this country to broaden your nose. It's a movement among us to shrink our nose.
I think there's a difference in that, and I think there's a caveat to that type of statement. When your intention is to emulate whiteness,
Which is their intention.
correct.
It's not the Aborigines. It's not the interracial.
Well, but here's
It's
the
not
thing.
these
But I do think the vast majority, I think, are doing it in order to, assimilate white culture.
to be quote unquote beautiful.
Correct.
Which is a white supremacist.
However, I wouldn't
aesthetic.
cookie cut every individual who are individually expressive.
Well, I ain't cooking.
That
I'm
may-
cake cut.
Well, what about the kids, though? What about the kids, though, who are emulating their older aunts and their older sisters? They don't know that these people are mimicking white people and wanting to be white. But if there's a 10-year-old girl, she wants to be like her black aunt who has white blonde hair. And I'm asking you this question: can that person? Well,
it's still rooted in white
They woke.
I remember when there were no weaves, and I just like I saw the genesis of BLM, I saw the genesis of the weave, and I saw black women going from hating themselves to feeling better about themselves because they can do that, like Becky does. So it's really creating an outcome. A lot of them, I don't think a lot of these sisters really want because we're confused. We're not focused. We don't have a critical analysis. In order to be an activist for social change and to do what you're talking about in terms of just simply embodying transformation by your behavior, we have to have a critical analysis. If you are woke, you're aware about that and it concerns you. You don't just continue to casually get your weave done and drink your whatever that stuff is called. You're like, wait a minute. And you teach your friends to say, wait a minute. And you create a culture of, wait a minute.
So do you think that you can date outside of your race or date white people or date somebody that's not black and be down for the cause?
Well, if you are seeing somebody who is an oppressor, then you're doing nothing more than sleeping with your oppressor. You're being raped. You're sleeping with your rapist.
Well, here's the thing. When we come down to that bottom line of truly fundamentally understanding that at the end of the day, we're all human beings. There is no true delineation between different races. We're Homo sapiens.
We're Homo sapiens, but the word human is of color, man, civilized being. They are a kind of man, which is why they call themselves mankind. They say it all the time. Then they're speaking of themselves. They know that. They are not fully human. They are mankind. So we're not the same.
Are all white people oppressors?
Absolutely. By definition. Anybody who classifies themselves as white is an oppressor.
Why?
In this country.
Why?
Because it was built on oppression. And we are the ones that are oppressed. So if you classify yourself as white, you are an oppressor.
Even if your actions aren't oppressive.
Even if your actions, your actions would have to be giving reparations back to the poor and the working class. If you are not doing that, then you are an oppressor.
I'm in a relationship with a white presenting Latino. So
he's a Mexican.
He's a Mexican. But he's a white.
He's white presenting.
He just looks white.
Does he classify himself as white?
No. So then it dives down a little bit deeper when you talk about when you're in these relationships with individuals who are on the other side of the spectrum that typically would be on the beneficial side of the spectrum. Mm-hmm. Him being a Mexican, they face a lot of the similar negative stereotypes that come along with black people.
But there's a spectrum. If he's white presenting,
then he's not in that spectrum.
In Mexico, too.
Yeah, exactly.
Correct. He does have, he does, however, he lives here, and so he gets treated like any other Mexican. Because he has a specific aesthetic, the accent is thick. My thing is, whatever your journey is, and whomever you choose to take that journey with, are you with someone who is willing to fight, stand up, speak out, and dismantle the system? Or are you with someone who is looking to sit on the sidelines and be a spectator?
Does he?
We do. We are both very active, very vocal, and we stay out there.
For Black lives.
For Black lives and Latino lives.
Well, we're talking about Black lives here, though.
Correct.
And if someone who isn't Black, not speaking up or giving reparations back to the poor and working class, they are our oppressors. They are not on our side.
So let me ask you, can a white person not be because you said if they identify as white, can a white presenting person not identify as white?
They can.
What would they identify as? Caucasian?
I guess human. And understand that they come from a line of oppressors and come from a line of rapists and slave drivers, and just acknowledge of who and what their history is about. Then, and if they're paying reparations, meaning giving back to an organization, speaking up about that organization every time that you can. It's a lot of work you got to do. It's not just like standing in your truth and saying, well, yes, I'm against that. It's a lot of work comes in with that.
And that's where we wholeheartedly agree. And that to me is the defining factor of if this can even go anywhere.
So he is doing the work.
He does.
For Black people.
He does. And I think the only two people in here that knows me right now is Juan and G. And they see that we go out together and we're both very active in the community on both ends of the spectrum. He shows up and speaks out against and for Black lives. Okay. And he is also very active about the Latino immigrants and the mistreatment of Latino immigrants here in the country as well.
All encompassed.
Well, let's say from Kia, because Kia has an opinion.
I want to know how the whole thing started, though. What was the question that led to are all white people oppressors?
I asked the question, can you date outside of your race and be down for the cause? And so that's where it came from.
Or woke.
Yeah.
Okay. Woke. So I was in an interracial marriage and very much so down for the cause, and so was she. So I don't think that's as much of a factor, because if you look at the civil rights movement, a lot of them were in interracial relationships as well. She and I, with MSR Lesbian Bar, put together Equality March Atlanta with 2,500 people that was in commemoration of queer people of color. And there weren't any other organizations, not HRC, not GLAAD, not Georgia Equality, none of them did any of that for us. Like, we have written articles that have been or have been covered in Glamour and written in some of the largest LGBTQ publications, talking about the things that we have gone through and sharing the story of like just the difference, because it's so easy for people to be blind and numb to things that they don't have to touch. But she and I would walk into a building and get both sides, the difference of how Black people are treated compared to how white people are treated. And we addressed that then. And we also spoke out about it. And pretty much also creating a safe space in our community where queer people of color knew that they could come out and be welcome and share their talents and share their stories as well. Because I think bridging the gap and understanding where everybody's coming from. So that's the type of work that we do.
And it's that kind of bridging the gap that has watered down and compromised the possibility for black power. I don't agree with what she just said, because where are the institutions that affirm black people for 711 people in Atlanta?
People always asking us what's the tea. It ain't no tea, baby, can't you see? Loving me, loving you, loving we. LoveWorks with Juan and G.
After 170 years, we know you don't just have a baby. You have your first baby. Well, sometimes a couple more than you thought. Yeah, your life doesn't fit into any one plan. So whether it's the having your first and a second marriage plan, or the let's have one more.
2?
Make that 2 more plan.
Sweetie?
Let us help with your plan.
We can do that.
Sounds like a plan.
Start a plan that flexes with yours. New York Life.
Because I think bridging the gap and understanding where everybody's coming from. So that's the type of work that we do.
And it's that kind of bridging the gap that has watered down and compromised the possibility for black power. I don't agree with what she just said, because, and I think the reason why, for example, we're here in Atlanta. This is a allegedly predominantly black city. It has a large number of 711 black people. It has a black mayor, blah, blah, blah. Where are the institutions that affirm black people for 711 people in Atlanta?
The institutions that affirm?
Where are the institutions that clearly affirm 711 black people, the institutions and edifices in this city?
Where would you say they are for white people? And why aren't they also for black people? If they're for
that's
white
another
people?
question, and I don't mind the answer.
Where are the ones for white people? Because,
That's another question.
Because that would be the actual answer, because I'm guessing they don't have a sign that say no colors.
They don't have to. They don't have to.
I'm just trying to understand, because I think in order to be able to answer that question, I would need to know exactly what it is that you're speaking of, so I can give you something comparable. So they have this for white people, and I'm guessing we can go there too, but we also have this for black people. I just don't know, what's an example of specifically what you're talking about, so I can have something good to compare it to.
Okay, well, there's an area with rainbows on the street and stuff. What's it called?
Midtown.
That is historically, they've had bookstores, all kind of stuff, and it's pretty much white land and all.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the reasons why you all had a activity 2 or 3 months ago, something like that, was because of the racism that this community was practicing. Now, yes, they have edifices, entities, etc., that are for them, or that somebody would like to believe, particularly bridge builders, that anybody could go. But black people experience hostility. Black people experience attitudes. Black people experience dress codes. Black people experience all kinds of stuff that's aimed at black people to reduce the number of black people who are going to walk through the door. So my question is, where are the edifices in this many decades long SGL populated city that particularly affirm same-gender-loving black people? Where are they?
So you feel like those gay clubs and bars are about affirming white same-sex love?
When I was little, I used to be little, we used to wear Converse. They had straight up signs saying no Converse, because they knew who wore Converse.
Yeah.
So my question is, where's the affirmation of same-gender-loving black people in terms of an entity, not just a business where anybody can go to have you owned by somebody?
There isn't
place. Well, I know there's
The Gentleman's Foundation.
Thank you. And I think
we don't have a building yet, but we're on our way.
But I get what you're saying.
Exactly.
I feel and I think his point is important because the thing is, for this to be considered the Black Mecca, there's obviously a huge hole in it. And that hole comes from white people and gentrification. You know, and the city and those city leaders pandering
but it don't
to
just
it.
It don't just come from white folks. It comes from a hole in black love inside of black people.
Well, exactly. And that the black elite.
We don't feel entitled.
Yeah.
White people have entitlement concepts. This is my shit.
Right.
Next, they even tripping. We're like, maybe I deserve this. I'm not sure if I deserve this or not. Can I go to your white bar, please? I mean, and we have to have a critical analysis and know who we are, and like how you cure cancer by admitting that there's an infection. We are not admitting there's an infection. We're putting a weave on the infection. We put some cute clothes on the infection, some earrings on the infection, and some sex on the infection, and some drinking on the infection. You can't recreate the broken wheel. You have to create something that's going to inspire critical thinking, self-love, transformation, healing, and advocacy for Black people and the advancement of the state of Black people, without question, or else you're going to still go back to an HIV epidemic that everybody else has resolved, but this community can't because they don't love itself enough to be consistent enough to protect itself, because it's in question about whether it's worthy of protection. When the white gay community decided to actually be real about the fact that they had a virus that was killing people, they got busy to save white men. And I mean, it was specific. This was back in the no confidence days. This was there was no. As a matter of fact, there's a bad film called The End Game, which is an HIV in the Black community film in terms of its alleged purpose, that starts off talking about the fact that epidemiologists found out that Black people were most infected in the early '80s, but they took it off the radar because they didn't want Black people to be in the spectrum of discussions. They want all the money and the attention to go to white folks. Get the film, The End Game, and it starts off telling that story. It's not me making it an end game. HIV in the Black community. So white men said, this is serious, and they loved white men. They weren't confused about men, about who they loved. The people in leadership were all white men who loved white men, and they were not playing, and they focused on saving white men's life, and they did it. They also had the power to appoint the Black people that they gave the baton to do this work. Of course, most of the Black people, almost 90% of the people they had the baton to was in love with them. It was Black people who had a codependency, white addiction. Most of these people that were doing the Black work for HIV/AIDS for Black folks were Black for $20 an hour and went home to white folks. They didn't have synergy. They didn't have consistency. They didn't love Black people at home and from their organs out. And they didn't have the kind of love white boys have for each other that helped literally save them. It's now 2017, 18, and there's been a slight reduction in HIV incidence among Black folks, singularly Black folks, and that's simply basically because the virus is tiny. Black folks too. It's just been around, and it's just tired. It has nothing to do with people's programs, because these programs are ran by a bunch of incompetent people who are being more gay than Black around saving Black folks. So you got to deal with that lack of worthiness, and frankly, white folks can interrupt that agenda.
I brought up Equality March, and it's on my heart so heavily because the reason that we did that was because when the national call went out saying this is for queer people of color and that's who we want to take the lead of it, those larger organizations, they didn't care. But of those 2,500 people, I would say maybe 150 of those people were Black. And then when the march happened, because there was a march after the rally, and of course the news covered all of this, what they filmed was the actual people marching. And the overwhelming majority of those people, with the exception of myself and my models, they were white people. And then I get the backlash from our community. What's with these white women marching saying this is what equality looks like? But I know that I went to individuals and reached out, and I know that my people reached out, and I know that for whatever reason, we did not show up like we do for some other things. So my question is, genuinely, how do we bridge this gap in our own community? If you're saying that the issue is watering ourselves down when we reach across the aisle, how do we do this in our own community and let people know that when we're doing something positive and we're trying to come together on these things, how do we engage our own community outside of anybody else?
Dr. CLEO mentioned in our community, there's just a huge lack of self-love. And I think when it comes to showing up for these marches and showing up for things that could advance us as people, it's the lack of self-love that prevents us from showing up.
But it's also the container in language that's being used. When you use these terms that bring into the psyche whiteness, like queer, and in some cases like gay and lesbian, the LGBT and all that kind of stuff, it creates a schism in the Black psyche of questioning, is that about me?
So what does yours say?
Does that affirm me? Does that really include me? I'm not sure about that. See, when I was younger.
So what does yours say?
We say same gender loving people.
Same gender loving people. So then I need to change the verbiage to from queer people of color to same gender loving people, and that would be the solution.
Well,
what did you all use? Did y'all say
let me ask you a
color?
question. We put it in context.
I think it was LGBTQ.
Let me put it in context.
It's the acronyms. We've been messing up. So the gentleman's ball, huge numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Do you all say LGBTQ?
Mm-hmm.
So for the Andro Fashion Show, huge numbers, LGBTQ. For all of the parties.
People gonna come to a party. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the capacity that we had as an organization to get large numbers of people to come out to do activism.
Understandable. That's what I was talking about too. But when you said the acronym is offensive, I mentioned that after the 2500.
It's not necessarily offensive. It's confusing.
I think that what he was saying was that and he didn't say that it was offensive, but he did say that it was confusing. You don't know. You don't. If you see LGBTQ, you don't necessarily know if that's for black people.
When you affirm black people in their own image, they become intrigued. And they're willing to do things that advance them politically. It affirms them on a cultural and soul level. But you can get anybody to come to get a drink at a party.
What's the answer outside of somebody might hate themselves because they date outside of them race? Outside of it's the acronym that's confusing, even though the same acronym is confusing to the same people.
You want to understand what I'm talking about, but you don't. You're putting measures on it. You can't do this, you can't do that.
No, I'm literally like asking, like, what's the answer? What's the answer? We can all get together right now because I can tell you something that I have going on. I can tell you like my next thing that I consider activism, and because I genuinely want to know, like, it's not me versus you. I want to know how to bring our people out and have our voices heard more.
We have to do stuff that doesn't reaffirm whiteness and redismiss blackness. We have to do stuff that feels like it's affirming of black people, not just by a buzzword, but that contains education. And that creates with hardcore things that people do not know, in most cases, that affirm them as same-loving black people. The rainbow flag, all that kind of stuff, doesn't do that. Not only that, how many times have you seen something that comes out of the traditional gay culture that encourages the affirmation of black people?
Like I said, I can tell you what it is. I know my next thing is. So we're doing a creative activism panel with black gay folks. Is that one okay?
Whatever you want to use.
All right, black gay folks. And invite the community in to talk about creative activism. Is that something that you feel like will work?
What's going to happen is you're going to do what people have been doing forever, is get a bunch of black people to come in and articulate a white paradigm.
Well, again, you're talking about the problem, but what's the solution?
Well, one of the solutions is to understand the problem. They're going to go into a black space if they get there and talk about queerness and all this white stuff, and people can go there and they're going to be entertained, they're going to go home. They're not going to feel it on a cultural level.
Some of the things may need to be more than just, a panel of people showing up and speaking, about experiences. There needs to be something that affirms me and then also empowers me to leave this experience motivated, hopefully, to do something.
I understand that racism is real. Mm-hmm. I understand that racism is very real in Atlanta's gay community, where we have two separate prides, where we have, I live it. I'm not denying that at all. I don't want y'all to think that that's my perspective or that's what I'm defending, that it doesn't exist. But what I am saying is, we can talk about that all day, but until we sit down and come up with some solutions for people who are trying to make that difference, like, it's kind of, we just swimming in circles. I want to know how to make it better.
Can black people be racist?
No.
Can black people be racist?
No.
Why not?
Because racism is a system. It's a system built and created by people who classify themselves as white. Black people can be racist if they're racist against black people, but they can't be, we don't have power to be racist.
Black people can discriminate.
Yeah, exactly. Prejudice.
They can discriminate. They can have prejudices against.
Black people can, have limits on who they want to be bothered with, but they don't have the power.
To be racist.
To have the power to implement the system of racism.
What is racism then?
Racism is a system created by people who classify themselves as white. These systems affect us politically, financially, sexualized, labor, law, war.
So what is
So
a
if you
racist
said,
person?
right, yeah, if you said someone was racist using that adjective, what does that mean? That's a person that prejudges someone based on their race.
Their prejudgment is backed by racism.
I understand.
Our prejudgment
question
is backed by our feelings.
So my question
it doesn't
isn't
go anywhere.
like the foundation. My question is literally, so what do we call a black person who does not like other
Prejudice.
other people? So it's prejudice. That was just my whole question.
Exactly, because racist individuals have the power to implement oppressive policies. So that racist white person who thinks those problematic oppressive thoughts, they have the influence to go into voting booths, to go into schools, to create financial institutions, to create businesses, financial job opportunities and things like that continues to perpetuate that oppressive system.
Right.
So even that Becky with that Starbucks latte, who's a stay-at-home mom, she is still just as influential in that oppressive system when she goes into the voting booth, when she supports her husband and or wife with any type of racist or oppressive agendas, or when she's attending those PTA meetings and all of those things. It all has those trickle down effects.
So the foundation of racism is power.
Yeah. Correct. Yeah. Exactly.
Systemic power, institutionalized power,
financial, socioeconomic.
Would you agree?
Control needs to be added.
Control.
Yeah,
Okay. Dominance, basically. Okay. I just want to make sure we're operating from that same.
Black people
Right. I think we all.
But you know that. So did y'all see the Tajik Hall video?
Yes.
You know who Tajik Hall is?
Tajik Hall. He's
So Tajik Hall is a popular artist.
Oh, I heard
who perpetuates a very talented individual, but his body of work portrays black folk in a very stereotypical negative light as the ghetto, the ratchet,
the buffoonery, all of those.
And they feature white people mimicking that behavior and kind of making a mockery of black folk, in my opinion.
A minstrel show.
Yeah. A modern day.
And he's also a lot of the black community feel like he's not connected to the black community.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. So he dates outside of his race. Which doesn't mean he's not connected, but
he dates white people. He claims that he dates other people, but he dates white people.
Yes.
Well,
of course.
And so I asked about him because that was one of the things he said on the video was about because there was a LGBT, whatever he identifies as, black blogger. He was a black blogger, and he was talking about coming for Tajik in his latest video, which is Trade. And so in the video, Tajik talks about him being racist towards white people because he was calling white people mayonnaise. And so he was saying, well, this was a video, this would be racist.
Isn't that equally racist? Yeah.
There's a narrative that black people are watching without being informed generally, that's creating a perspective that they think represents us all because we're not creating a counter narrative. What have we done to give people another perspective of us? Where is the nurturing, positive, affirming, and black that celebrates being same gender loving? I want some of that. You have to co-create a community that's worth respecting, not just by everybody on the outside. That's a fringe benefit, but from each other.
Yeah, you have to be that example for those straight folks.
Mostly for us. It's not even about trying to prove nothing to heterosexual people. When you have respect for yourself, people notice that and they respect you. If you don't, people notice that too, and they don't have no respect for you. And this community has not done anything but replicate whiteness. This community will understand that fighting to access whiteness is not the same thing as fighting for black power.
Correct.
It ain't the same thing. Going somewhere with rainbow flags, hollering queer, copying off of white folks, and being proud in that white paradigm, not the same thing of repairing black folks and loving black people in our own image, where we are our own frame of reference, as opposed to Greece and Germany, and where their whole thing comes from Europe, lesbian, Greece.
The thing is, if we are in charge of repairing our community, we don't need those outside forces in that particular regard.
Sure don't.
In the repair process. You know, I think that's where
It's an interruption.
I think that's where another one of the shortcomings in the Black community happens, especially here in the United States. Every other group is perfectly fine taking care of their own.
That's right.
Chinese people,
That's right.
they have the Asians, they have their own restaurants, their own businesses. You don't see Black people working for them.
But how do you say that, but then in the next breath you say, but we're all humans and we all need to relate on the Homo sapien level and all that? Because to me that's contradictory.
It's not a contradiction because again, when we're operating within this construct, we are a race of different. When we're operating within that construct, we understand that different groups are affected differently within that construct, and because our group is the group that has been negatively affected and the group that is broken, there's nothing wrong with us focusing on that specific group that has been broken and trying to repair it and to heal it.
Black people, African American people, are dealing with a cancer called internalized white supremacy myth. We don't like ourselves, and we don't like each other. And there's a word that we use called the N-word that bolsters the implication of inferiority. That's a rhythmic cultural norm that compromises our capacity to do something like what you guys talked about. We have to like ourselves. But, and I'll close with this, the groups that are doing better than us aren't being violent. They're just being self-contained. Chinatown don't got no bullets pointing at everybody, but they successfully built major Chinatown metropolises in New York, in San Francisco, and they own real estate and have power.
But they were given provisions. We haven't been given those same provisions.
And the bottom line is that, yes, there will be resistance to us. There always is. But we can do everything everybody else is doing. We can do everything that African immigrants do when they come over here. We can do it too, but they don't have the second guessing of cultural cohesion. They stay there until the job is done. We're worried, and we have N-word issues. Mm-hmm. These other people are not putting on themselves and using the word from their oppressor as a normal part of their vocabulary. Everybody who's powerful loves themselves in their own image, or they're so self-contained culturally, like Chinese, who has had a consistent culture for thousands of years, and some so-called Latino cultures who are so self-contained that white supremacy does not diminish them. And they don't call themselves beaners and kikes, and they don't call themselves an insult as a part of their songs that they write, as a part of how they say it during sex. The point is that we bring the scar tissue into our life and put a beat to it, and it demolishes us. We have to reverse all that stuff that has that kind of outcome. And it can be done. I've witnessed it, I've seen it, I've done it.
So I feel like,
go ahead.
I feel like, and I'm going to say this just because I'm making an assumption, because when I said the organizations did not get involved with this march, you immediately said white, like you thought that I was afraid to say white, which I'm not. Say white. But I wasn't only talking about white organizations. That was the point. So like,
you did say white. I said white. You said
and then I said I named other black ones as well.
All you lovers out there, we're gonna continue this conversation. That's a piece for you. Love you all. But we are going.
You're really good.
No, we can still talk, but we gotta let them go. It's our time.
Bye, y'all.
Thank you guys for joining.
This conversation was many things.
Many things. Right. I think that we talked about so many different things that are necessary for us to talk about. We don't have enough of these conversations. And so, I just think it was healthy overall.
What I really appreciated about this time was that folks agreed on a lot of things, but they disagreed also. And we were able to come together as a group of individuals with contrasting opinions, different point of views, and still have a fruitful conversation. And I think that's really important because, like I said earlier, it's not about changing anyone's mind. It's just about being your authentic self and modeling the behavior that you think should exist in the community.
Absolutely, and I hope that you guys got a lot of this conversation, a lot of this episode, but it does not stop here. We challenge you guys to go out and continue the conversation, continue your research to have these type of conversations, because that is the only thing that's going to help our community here.
Absolutely.
All right. So once again, thank you so much to New York Life Insurance for sponsoring this episode again. Please support those who support you. So make sure you go out and check out New York Life Insurance. And if you would like to sponsor an episode of LoveWorks with Juan and G, please email us at ask@juanandg.com, ask@juanandg.com. Peace.
Love you all.